Hello, brothers and sisters. I'm in my car right now, about to recap for you the Thursday night football game that took place between the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets, and the Jets lost the game. I thought it could happen, but I never dared dream it. The New York Jets, led by the third overall pick in the 2018 draft, losing to a third-string undrafted free agent in Brett Rippon, making his first NFL start, and a wildly banged-up Broncos team. But they managed to pull it off. Adam Gase managed to pull it off. This Jets team managed to pull it off. I'll be honest, I wasn't looking forward to this game, but it wasn't actually as bad as I thought it would. I mean, it was still a bad game. It was an ugly football game for a good portion. But it started off with some early fireworks. Sam Darnold had actually a very impressive touchdown run. It was like a 46-yard scramble to score the first touchdown of the game. And that was actually a really good play. That might have been the best play of the season so far for the Jets. And after that, Brett Rippon let loose and heaved a touchdown toss to Jerry Jeudy, who made an amazing play to make a contested grab from Pierre Desir. Really took the ball away from him. That was an unbelievable play by him for his first touchdown of his NFL career. So congratulations are in order for Jerry Jeudy. But after that, it was just a parade of field goals. Oh my god, there were so many penalties in this game. Undisciplined is the word. There's no other way to describe it. The Jets had some absolutely killer penalties, including at the end, which set up what ended up being the game-winning field goal for the Broncos. A killer face mask call on Quinnen Williams there. But there were others too. So many penalties that killed drives. The Jets had a ton of penalties on defense that kept drives alive for the Broncos on third downs when they had got them to go 3 and out, or they were ready to get them off the field. Yeah, it was just a mess. It was an undisciplined mess. Sam Darnold, I didn't think had a terrible game. Probably his best game of the season, but still, he had close to 50... I think it was an under 50% completion percentage, 230 yards, no touchdowns. He's still got to be better. But overall, I don't think Darnold was the reason why they lost this game. I thought Darnold limited his mistakes. Brett Rippon actually played pretty well. He was looking good. He was making some nice throws and had a beautiful touchdown throw to Tim Patrick to take the lead in the third quarter. That was really good, or to extend the lead in the third quarter at that point. But he had some absolutely killer mistakes down the stretch that allowed the Jets to get back into that game and make it competitive. He threw a pick six to Pierre Desir, who actually had a really good game after getting beat early by Jeudy for that touchdown. He had 2 interceptions on the game, and both of them were on terrible throws by Rippon. The first one was a ball that just should have gone into the third row, but he threw it in play and it was picked off on the sidelines. But that was a really good play too by Desir, so I don't want to take anything away from him. And the pick six is what allowed the Jets to actually get back into the game. Like I said, it was a field goal party up to that point, and the Jets only had the 1 touchdown by Sam Darnold up to that point. So the pick six was really the only reason the were really the only reason why this game was even competitive going down the stretch. Otherwise, it would have been like 37-16 or something like that. 37-19. It would have been another blowout. And I guess if there's a positive you could take away as a Jets fan, it was that the defense actually did something. And second is that this game actually was competitive in the fourth quarter, whereas going into the fourth quarter, you've been out of the game for the first 3 weeks of the season. So yeah, I really have no idea what you can take away from this game for either side. I mean, if you're the Broncos, you win, but it's a pretty hollow victory because, you're playing the Jets and you suffer even more injuries to some big players, and it's the very definition of a hollow victory if you're the Broncos. There were rumors going into this game that if they lost, Adam Gase would be fired, and so far today, from what I've seen, Adam Gase is still the head coach of this football team. But yeah, I mean, honestly, there has been no positives at all to take away from Adam Gase's coaching tenure, and you're thinking, well, you don't want to just give up on the season 4 weeks in. The season's over. You're 0-4. And at this point, it's more just about looking forward to the future and seeing what can you do to be competitive for next season. And number one on that list has got to be getting rid of Gase. I mean, it has to be. Adam Gase is not a good football coach. And I don't want to just put all of the blame squarely on Adam Gase, because I know he's dealing with injuries of his own, and their roster is just absolutely brutal. But you look at the way he schemes this offense and the way he puts his most talented players in positions where they cannot possibly succeed, and that's on him. You look at the abundance of penalties that this team has committed throughout the first month of the season. That's squarely on Adam Gase. So not only is this a depleted roster, not only is this a banged up roster, but it's still a very poorly coached roster, and I think last night was more evidence of that fact. So yeah, I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I hope you have a great Friday, and I'll see you on the next video. So even though this game is at 4 o'clock and I usually cover these games in order, I'm going to start off these predictions as I normally do with your Buffalo Bills taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. The Bills averted a catastrophic second-half meltdown and overcame a cacophony of terrible officiating to go 3-0 over the LA Rams, whereas the Raiders really just had the life drained out of them last week by the New England Patriots. Bill Belichick was able to completely take away their biggest playmakers on offense, the Raiders, and the Raiders just could not get anything going late. For the Bills, it's officially time to be concerned, in my opinion, about that defense. Because in Week 2, you could give them a pass for not having Tremaine Edmonds or Matt Milano, but in Week 3, they had both of those guys, and the Rams were able to put up nearly 500 yards of total offense. That is a troubling sign at this point of the season. The Bills' defense was expected to be the strength of this team. But the Raiders' defensive situation is not much better off. I do not foresee Josh Allen having any difficulty being able to move the ball on this Raiders' defense with the way that he has been playing through 3 weeks. I would look for this to be another big Stephon Diggs game, especially if John Brown is unable to go, as he left the Rams game with a calf injury and did not return. I think the Bills will win this game, but I by no means think that this is a game that the Bills can afford to look past. The Raiders team does have some backbone to it, but I have not known this Bills team to look past any opponents since Sean McDermott has taken over in Buffalo. I think the Bills need to get right on defense, but I still think that they have a better team in this matchup and that they should win this game. Moving on to the other games of this week, we start things off with the Browns and the Cowboys. This is a very interesting matchup. The Browns have bounced back nicely from their Week 1 drubbing by Baltimore. They're 2-1 after beating 2 lesser teams, and Baker Mayfield finally looks like he has that Year 1 swagger back to him. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt look like the best backfield in football at this moment, running behind the best offensive line in football through 3 weeks. And they go into Dallas to face a very vulnerable Cowboys team, who are coming off a loss to the Seahawks. No shame in losing to the Seahawks. I'm not docking them for that. But I still have some major concerns about the Dallas defense, who through 3 weeks of football have been unable to make any timely stops. This will be a good test to see where Cleveland is really at, and inversely, the Cowboys have to win this game. They have to. But I'm picking the Browns here. They just look more convincing to me right now, and the Cowboys are barely treading water in that division right now. Up next is another interconference clash between the Chargers and the Buccaneers. Justin Herbert came back down to earth a little bit after having a very nice debut against the Chiefs, but he will have his work cut out for him this week because that Bucs defense is for real. Tom Brady is really in a similar situation to where he was in his last year with New England, where the defense is really carrying the load and only asking Brady to do enough to not lose games. The only difference is that he actually has some difference-making talent on that offense, namely Mike Evans, who he's starting to build some chemistry with, which is what you like to see if you're a Bucs fan. The case you could make for the Chargers is that their defense has also looked strong through 3 weeks, but you still have a lot of question marks on offense with the aforementioned rookie quarterback. I certainly think there's potential for Justin Herbert, but he's still very young and very raw. I think the Buccaneers should win this game. Up next is the Vikings versus the Texans, a clash of two teams who traded away their top receivers in the offseason and are all the worse for it. Both of these teams are 0-3. Both of these teams have just looked abysmal. Especially on defense, neither of these teams can stop an offense to save their lives. Justin Jefferson had a huge game with 7 catches and I think like 175 yards and a touchdown. Not to mention with Dalvin Cook running for 185 yards last week, that's not going to be fun for the Texans defense to deal with, who, as I just mentioned, had their doors blown off by James Conner and that Pittsburgh offensive line. But the Vikings can't stop anyone on defense either, and their offense down the stretch last week looked disorganized and chaotic. I'm leaning towards the Texans here because I think they have the better quarterback. Kirk Cousins still looks like a deer in the headlights out there without Stephon Diggs, and this team is just falling apart at the seams. You got Mike Zimmer throwing his own players under the bus. Kirk Cousins is pointing fingers at the coaching staff. It's a mess in Minnesota right now. Up next is the Seahawks taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Seahawks have just been fun to watch. While the Dolphins have looked better this season, especially on offense, the Seahawks are just in another league right now. The Dolphins do look like they have a lot of promising talent to build around with Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki, anchored by Devontae Parker. That is a pretty strong 3-headed attack on offense. And if you're the Dolphins coaching staff, you have to love what you're seeing from Ryan Fitzpatrick right now while you wait for Tua to come up and develop. But yeah, there isn't much to say about this game. This should be an easy win for the Seahawks, although Jamal Adams going out last week with an injury is a huge blow for that defense. Up next we have the team that the Dolphins defeated last Thursday to earn their first win, the Jaguars, taking on the Bengals. After a magical start to the season where it looked like the Jaguars were going to surprise everybody and go on this unbelievable ride throughout the season, the Jaguars returned to earth on Thursday and now head to Cincinnati to take on Joe Burrow, who, as I just mentioned, is still searching for his first NFL win. The Bengals' offensive line has been garbage to start this season, but they have a pretty easy task against them as Jacksonville's pass rush has been unable to even get close to a quarterback in the backfield to start this season. Gardner Minshew has to be looking at this as a get-right game against a Bengals defense that has also been struggling at the start of the season. I want to pick the Bengals. I really do want to see Burrow finally get that first win, but I'm going to give the Jaguars one last chance to show me what they got and get me back on board. So I'm going to pick them in this game, but if they let me down again, that's it. I'm out. That brings us to the Lions taking on the New Orleans Saints. Both teams are 1-2 heading into this game. Both teams desperately need this win to get back to 500. The Saints need this win a lot more, though, because they're behind Tampa in the division right now. And Tampa is playing a very beatable Chargers team this week, and you do not want to fall behind 2 games to the Buccaneers. Meanwhile, the Lions coming off of a close win over the Cardinals. The Cardinals are a good team. I'm not trying to downplay that, but if the Lions can get this win against the Saints, who have been one of the juggernauts of the conference for so long, suddenly you're back to 2-2, and you have some momentum going with 2 quality wins in a row. I'm still not prepared to press the panic button on the Saints just yet, though. I still think they can figure things out. They have the talent, but the defense really has to return to form, and the Saints have to cut down on the penalties. It's now 2 weeks in a row where the Saints have just shot themselves in the foot at every turn with penalties. I'm going to pick the Saints here, but I'm still not sold on the Lions just yet, but if the Saints lose this and go 1-3, it will officially be panic time for Saints fans. Speaking of the Cardinals, they go on the road to take on the Panthers. Matt Rule got his first win of the season last week against the Chargers, whereas the Cardinals, as I mentioned, lost on a last-second field goal to the Lions. And to my surprise, the Panthers actually were able to win that game last week with their defense, who had been really struggling through the first 2 weeks to get stops, but they were able to step up last week and make some really big plays when it counted. Can they do it again against a Cardinals offense that has a lot more firepower with Hopkins and Kirk and Fitzgerald. But Kyler Murray has got to bounce back. 3 interceptions, that cannot happen again. And the Cardinals' defense is not very good either. I could see this going either way, but I'm not prepared to jump ship just yet on the Cardinals. Every team takes a bad loss at some point of the season. So I'm going to pick the Cardinals here to bounce back. Up next is the Colts taking on the Bears. And it's really difficult to evaluate where both of these teams are going through 3 weeks. The Colts lost to the Jaguars, then beat up on an aimless Vikings team and just a woeful Jets team. But now the Bears have officially ripped the Mitch Trubisky Band-Aid off and brought in Nick Foles to take over as the signal caller. Will Nick Foles be any better than Mitch Trubisky? That is the question of this game. And where in the world is Khalil Mack? Has anybody seen him in the past calendar years? He's still alive? Because he has had so little impact on this defense that I would actually believe that the real Khalil Mack is off sipping martinis in Montenegro while his less athletic twin brother puts the pads on and plays for the rest of his contract. That's where we're at with this Bears defense right now, and it's sad because going into last season, this was expected to be the most intimidating defense in football. Now it's pedestrian at best. Meanwhile, the Colts have bounced back nicely from their Week 1 stunner and are a game back of the Titans in the divisional race. Rivers looked good last week, but he was playing the Jets. But you do wonder if this Bears team is a legit 3-0 team. And I'm leaning towards the Colts here. I think I'm going to pick them. I can't be sold on a Bears team who has to bench their quarterback mid-game. And this is sad because I had a prediction laid out for this game, but unfortunately the Tennessee Titans have now had 11 people in their organization test positive for COVID. So this game between the Steelers and the Titans has been postponed to later in the season. And that really sucks. I feel bad for the fans of both these teams. Both teams have gotten off to really good starts. They were both 3-0 coming in, and I was actually looking forward to talking about this game and seeing how it would play out. So yeah, I can't really pick this game because it doesn't look like it's going to happen, but we can hope that the Titans can get the outbreak under control and that the players who did test positive for COVID will be able to make a full recovery, as well as the personnel who tested positive as well. The good news is, though, that the Vikings, the team that Tennessee played last week, they had no positive tests this week, and they were able to return to practice as of recording this today on Thursday. So that is an encouraging sign. Still, though, this looked like it was going to be a good game, and it's a shame that we're going to have to wait a while to see how it plays out. This also serves as a good reminder, too, to cherish the games that we do get to watch this season because something like this could take it away in an instant. Up next is the Ravens taking on the football Washingtons. Don't look now, but Washington is leading the NFC East. Oh my goodness. What a garbage division. I don't think that's going to last very long, though, because they're just running into a buzzsaw against what will likely be a very pissed off Ravens team who got dominated by the Chiefs on national television. But Washington doesn't have anywhere near the firepower on offense to replicate that dominance, and if Baltimore can protect the quarterback from that very formidable front seven that Washington has, which by the way is now without Chase Young, then this defense will not be very hard to attack in my opinion. So long story short, I'm picking the Ravens. Next up is the Giants heading out west to take on the Rams. This is another potential buzzsaw matchup. The Giants are lost without Saquon Barkley, and the Rams probably think that they got robbed by the officials at the end of the Bills game because of that questionable PI call that went against them. And there definitely were no other highly questionable calls that directly benefited the Rams throughout that game. Not a single one. So the Rams will be a bit miffed about that, and the Giants are completely underwater at this point. I'm picking the Rams, who, by the way, could also use a get-right game on defense. Next up is the Patriots heading to Arrowhead to take on the 3-0 Kansas City Chiefs. I gotta be honest, my confidence in picking you against the Ravens was waning a little bit. The consensus on ESPN and NFL Network seemed to be that the Ravens looked like the better team going into that game, and I was a little nervous for you guys going in, but you know what? I stuck by you, and you went in, you took care of the Ravens, and you came through when it mattered. And I want to thank you for that, Chiefs. And speaking of coming through when it matters, you'd be doing the Bills a huge favor by knocking off the Patriots here. So I'll cut you a deal. We take care of business against the Raiders this week. You go in and take care of business against the Patriots, and we're both sitting atop our division with 2-game leads. That makes everybody happy, and I think that sounds like a fair deal. You think that sounds like a fair deal? I think that sounds like a fair deal. I'm going to go ahead and pick you for this game. I apologize if you want some actual analysis for this game. And that brings us to the Eagles versus the 49ers. This is the Sunday night football game, for some reason. I think the Eagles are thanking their lucky stars that fans cannot come to games, otherwise they'd be getting booed off the field week after week. You come into Cincinnati 0-2 and you tie? Yikes. Meanwhile, the 49ers are going to be starting Nick Mullins once again at quarterback, amongst another slew of backups. And I still have more confidence in them to beat the Eagles at this point, which is a sad state of affairs for the Eagles. Nick Mullins looked really good last week, though. I have to give him credit, and the thing that I think has gone overlooked is that they are incredibly well coached. Kyle Shanahan has done an excellent job coaching this team through some pretty tough waters to start this season. Now there's a question, though, of how they will hold up against a higher level of competition with playing their backups right now. But I think for this week, they'll be able to handle the Eagles rather easily. And that will bring us to the Monday night game, which is the Falcons versus the Packers. For some reason. I said back in week 2 that Aaron Rodgers was prone to some slumps and that I was cautious about the Packers for that reason. Well, not anymore. 3 games and Rodgers looks great. Meanwhile, the Falcons seem to be capitalizing off of the 28-3 momentum by authoring an entire dissertation on how to blow leads in the fourth quarter. I won't rehash my rant about how badly they need to let go of Dan Quinn, but he does need to go. But I don't think the Falcons team will have a chance to blow a lead in this game because the Packers are just that good right now. And the Falcons are really bad defensively. Packers aren't much to write home about defensively either, but they do come up with timely plays when they need them. So I think this could potentially be another high-scoring shootout type game due to the Falcons' offensive talent. But I am picking the Packers to win on Monday night. This isn't a difficult choice to me. The Falcons are bad. They're really bad. And that's going to do it for another week of NFL picks. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy the games this Sunday. And as always, I hope you have a blessed week, and we will see you in the next video. And of course, go Bills!